Welcome everybody to Z School. I believe it's 20.17. I should look the numbers up. I never do. Today we're going to talk about a cool topic called workflow. And for people who came to Zoho from product like Act, this is a big concept, new, big difference between the two. Two products do things differently, some better than the other. But when it comes to workflow and process automation, Zoho is amazing, scary amazing. There are at least 8 ways to automate your business processes in Zoho. Common one is workflow. It's where you ought to start. There's some others, simple ones, and then they've added some extremely complicated ones. We're going to start with workflow. I'm going to go over to our demo system, which is here. And we'll talk about what workflow is. I call it the trigger and action model. So you have a trigger condition. Something happens, and that starts the workflow. It could be a certain date. It could be somebody changes a field, like they mark a sale sold or closed or dead or lost. Or it could be a date like someone's birthday and you want to send them a card. So a week before their birthday, you want to be notified. So you could trigger on a date. You could trigger on a record creation or record update. You could trigger on a phone call, all kinds of things. And then there's an action. What do you want to do? And so we're going to show you the various triggers and the various actions. And we are going to go directly to it. What I'm not doing right now, maybe I'll take some recommendations from you, is you should always define your workflows. It's obviously good to have an idea of what you want to do. Like define your trigger condition, define your action. Say, when this happens, I want this to happen. And then it's much easier to write them. But we're just going to kind of go in and take a look around. And so to get to workflow, you go to the setup button, the wrench. And under automation, the first thing you see is workflow. So we go in here, and the workflow you have set up will be listed here, and the module that the workflow works on. Some of these workflows I created, some get created for you, like these 3 down here. A couple of weeks ago, we did a session on WorkDrive, and we actually installed an extension for Zoho WorkDrive into Zoho CRM, and the WorkDrive needed some workflows made, so it made them. And for instance, if I try to click on these workflows to look at them, they'll let me look at them a little bit, but it says right here, read only. This is not one you can change. It's one they wrote. It's part of the extension you installed. I try to click on this function to see what it does. Nothing happens. So, and I can't save or cancel. All I can do is kind of see what fires it or kind of what happens. And it created 3 of them, one for contacts, one for accounts, and one for deals. But it's really hard to say what it does. If you look at the extension, you probably figure it out. Every Zoho system usually gets installed with a dummy big deal rule here. You probably have it, and maybe it worked. I turned it off. You can way over here, there's a little green button. You can turn workflows on and off if you don't like them or if they're. So I'll turn it on. It doesn't matter whether it's on or off. You can still look into it and see what it does. So let's just click on it and see what it does. Obviously, it's on the deals module. And this is really pretty self-explanatory, but we'll go through it. So the trigger condition is the rule will be executed when a deal is created or edited to meet the condition. And so we have a condition here that says if the amount is over $1,000 and the probability goes to 100%, and that means that it's 1. So this is kind of a filter condition on the trigger. We don't want this to happen on every created deal, but we do want it to happen when it's 1. And what happens? Well, we send out an email. It's called an email notification. And I can actually click on this email notification. And it says it's a template here called the big deal alert. First, we'll look at who gets it. And it is anybody who has a CEO role in the company. So $1,000 sale, the CEO gets an email. And the email looks like this. I can come down here and select the template. And it says we got a big deal. There's the deal name, the contact's last name, the amount, the closing date, and who sold it. And then it's got our logo in it. So this is something that Zoho came with, but it gives you an idea that as soon as somebody closes a deal, CEO gets an email. And he gets this email. Let's take a look at other actions. So there's something called an instant action. These things happen right away. So right away we send out an email. What else can we do? I can hit plus action here, and I can update a field. I can send an email. I can schedule a task. I could create some record. Maybe I don't think we have anything in here, but a custom record, a custom module record. I could do a webhook, like create the customer in our accounting system or something. A webhook is generally a reach to an outside program or another Zoho program. And then I could write custom code. We do this a lot. This is what's called a function. You write a deluge function to do something. And I'll show you an example of that. And then I can do these same things over here under scheduled action. So I might want to, wait a day. I'll come over here and I'll just say, you know what, let's wait 1 day after this triggers. And I will schedule a task for someone to, so we've got tasks here. I don't know where that came from. So I could schedule a task for, say, somebody in my customer service department to reach out to them and get them set up, take the order, So I'll create a new task here. We'll just do this real quick. Get client details or something. And this task will be due a day after I schedule it. So we'll say plus 1 day. And then it's assigned to, I can pick who I want to have do this. There's only 2 of us in this demo system, so I'll have standard user do it. I will notify them via email that they will have something to do. And the description down here is, we have a new customer. And I can actually hit the pound sign and drop in some fields here. So somewhere in here would be the contact name, hopefully, maybe not. Deal owner, closing name. Got to be in there. I'm not going to get hung up on it. So be set up. All right. So this is just a simple little email. There's going to be a task that gets assigned. And so then I could schedule a thing a week after that saying do something else. And it can just go on and on. I can also have other conditions, like say if it's over $10,000, I come down here and I say that the amount is over $10,000, then I want to do something else. Send the sales, notify the salesman he's going to Hawaii. And so you can have many conditions and you can kind of flow this out. All of this stuff happens within a module. It's hard to do stuff outside unless you get into code. But this came with your Zoho CRM, so you can play with it if you want. And let's try, we'll leave this one alone. So I'll just cancel out of here. This is a quick example of a trigger. We can filter it so it doesn't happen all the time. And then we can have our actions, which are update fields, create records, send emails, schedule tasks, or run code. And let me just say, do you want to discard changes? Yes. So this was the big deal rule, which I had off. And I'm going to go back and look at the chat now just to see if anybody has any questions. Nope. Okay. So we'll do another example here. Some of these I want to show you, like we'll do a simple one here. So let's say I have a contact or a lead. You know what? We'll do a deal. Sorry. And I want to alert people 1 week before the closing date. You know what? We'll do something else. Needs follow-up. And if a deal is untouched for 7 days, I want to nudge the salesman. So okay, our trigger will actually be something that didn't happen, which is there's no activity for 7 days. So I'll go into here and it'll say, when do you want to execute this rule? And I'll actually say on a date. Well, how do I know what day? I'll say 7 days. 7 days after last activity time. And we will pick 8 a.m. And we'll just do this once. You can do it a lot, but so, and we'll say that any deal where the stage is not closed. So we have, these ones, they're over, they're closed. We don't want to trigger on those. It's okay if you don't touch those. So this will be, there's a field in all Zoho called last activity time. It's really the last time the deal was touched. It could have been a field update. It could have been a phone call. There's some other date fields here, like modified time, which is the last time the data was modified. That there's also the closing date. I could have done this thing also. I could say there's the closing date, and before, 7 days before, I want to remind the salesman that he's got a deal that's due in 7 days. So you can trigger on, there's a number of date fields here. If you had other dates in the system, let's just talk about that. Say someone owns a product and their contract is about to expire, or their warranty is about to expire. You want to send them an email 7 days before saying, hey, just so you know, say your insurance policy is about to expire. So 30 days before, you want to fire off an email. And so we could have a field in there called expiration date. We can trigger on it. So this is not a record action. Nobody has to touch the record. This is just going to happen at a certain time. So we'll say, we'll do this one 7 days before closing date. And the state, it's not closed, it's still open. So I want to send an email, and I have to create my email notification, which means I have to create my template. Now, we've talked about this in previous sessions, so I'm going to just kind of gloss through it, but I will say upcoming deal reminder. I'm going to send this to the deal owner, and I might even send it to the owner's manager. We can set up users in our users section. We can say who they report to. So I want to send it to his boss too, her boss. I could also just put in, the home office or something. I can just put in an email address. Next thing I have to do is which template I'm going to send, and the only template I have is this one. I could obviously create a template from here. I think in the interest of time, I'll skip it. I'll just use this one. Doesn't say anything, but it's got that data in it. So we'll send the upcoming deal reminder notification. And then just to be thorough, I'm going to schedule a task for that person. And it's going to be close the deal. And we'll put it in 0 days. And the user will be the deal owner. I know there's a way to, these are all my users, but the deal owner is, if you do not assign to a user, it will be assigned to the owner. I don't even have to tell it to the owner. It's right there. Close this deal, and there's the deal name right there. So we've got 2 tasks, and it's going to be 7 days before. Hard to test this and show you how it works, but trust me, it works. I'll show you one I wrote that uses code. It's this one called geocode accounts. We do this a lot for people. Let me just show you on the accounts tab here. If I pick Rangoni of Florence here, we've added some latitude, longitude, and county fields to the address. And so I wrote some automation where if anybody puts in an address, we'll write some code with Google and we'll get the latitude, longitude of that address, and we'll also get the county. So let's look at the automation. Workflow rules. We'll look at geocode accounts. And so this is on the accounts module. It says the rule will be executed whenever an account is created or edited to meet a condition. And I don't filter it. It's for all accounts. And I'm just going to run some code. And this is where it's programming. It uses a language Zoho wrote called Deluge. It's an acronym for something long. I'll click on this and we'll take a look at the code, but we're not here to look at code. But I do want to show you that this code is maybe 40, 50 lines of code. And here it is. So we grab the city, state, zip, and we run it through Google. And we take the response, and then I update county, latitude, and longitude. And it's 44 lines of code. So it's not like it took a week to program. A lot of testing. So let's just see what happens. And this is immediate. So this is not, it's an instant action. It's going to happen right away. So I'll go to an account. We'll add a new one. We'll put in 12.3. We need that, but this won't fire unless we have an address down here. So I'm just going to put in an address. Should be enough. If I hit save, I'm creating an account. It should fire. And it did not, but maybe it did. Function geocode accounts was called. Probably tell me this isn't going to work, right? Do a refresh. Didn't fire. Oh well. Something's wrong with my code. I'm going to debug it very quickly because it's probably something wrong with my API key. This is where you blame the code, but let's just take a look at it real quick. We'll go to the workflow, geocode the account, see what we do for a living all day. Here's the code. Run it. Status. Well, Google worked fine. This is everything Google gave back. I'm kind of surprised. It says if the response is okay. Yeah, Google sent us a response of okay. All right, I don't know why the workflow didn't show it, but that should have worked. Anyway, it ran the code because if I go to the account, it tells me that the code ran. Something didn't update for some reason, but in the timeline, Homer created an account and the workflow was called. So you see that the workflow was called. Sometimes you'll wonder, why did this record wind up like this? I don't know why this didn't update. I wonder if it's because we're on a demo system. Oh, well, I should have looked at that first. Anyway, the next one I had in here for you to see is will work. It's called set account to sold. And this says when a deal is updated, if it's set to closed won, I'm going to update the account that it's attached to say sold. But then I have a second condition down here. If the stage is lost or close lost, set the account to lost. So I'm just going to update the customer to say this guy's now a customer. He bought something. So let's test this, and hopefully this one will work. Right now I have an account I just created called 12-3 Marketing. And the status of the account is, it's called rating is blank. I'm going to add a deal. Sell insurance, boat policy, closing tomorrow for $50. So that won't do anything to the account. If this account still has nothing on it. I do see there's a deal here called boat policy. I will now move it to closed won. So now it's at the closed won stage, and it congratulates me for being a great salesperson. If I go back to 12-3 Marketing, hopefully the workflow fired. Oh, and the rating is now acquired. That's in this demo system. That's what it means the customer was acquired. So I updated the account. I believe if I go back to the deals now here, this boat policy, and he changes his mind and says, I found a better price. So we'll move it to lost to competition. Better price from Acme. And I go back to 12-3. Project canceled, which was our code for lost. So anyway, it's a way of keeping your data clean. You forget who your customers are because you sell them something, but you forget to go back to the record and update a field. We can actually, just through automation, do that. And again, if I look at 12-3 here, still never got a latitude or a longitude. We have to fix that. We can see that workflow's been doing some things behind the scenes. Nobody touched this record except workflow. All right, let's go back to look at questions. Chet, I think sometimes when I work on people's systems, I delete that out of there. Because if you like, as I said, Zoho brings it to you. They put it in there, and then people's go, every time I sell something, I get these emails, and I don't know how to make it stop. So when I'm setting somebody up for the first time, I'll just go in and take that out until they're ready for it. That's probably what happened. So I can show you that very quickly. If I go to the wrench, we'll do some advanced stuff here with workflow, just some ideas. So you can just hit, there's a little garbage can right next to it, and you can delete it. Only admins can get in here usually. You can change that with your permissions. One of the things I wanted to mention about workflow is that I believe the limit, if you're on the enterprise version, most of you are, is like 50 workflows per module. So you can see I've got right now 4 for deals. There's a little filter here. I'll change this to deals, and I'll see all my deal workflows. And, you know, this one triggers on the closing date. These 2 trigger on some field being updated, which was the stage field, right? And then we had when it was created. I sometimes see people, they'll create a workflow for all new deals, and then they'll create another workflow for all new deals. They'll create another workflow, and sometimes those workflows will conflict with each other. You know, one might say, assign it to this person. Or, you know, if it's this product, assign it to that person. But if it's in this state, assign it to a different person. Well, you get a deal where it's in this state and it is this product, then who wins? And if I have 5 workflows that all fire on create, when I create a workflow, it's hard to know what the sequence, what order those will fire in. You know, here in one workflow, I might be populating a field, and in the next workflow, I might be using that field to do something. So you got to be careful if you have a lot of workflows firing. You know, I don't know if you ever saw The Sorcerer's Apprentice in Fantasia when there's all those little brooms getting water. They're all saying, set it to this, set it to that, set it back to this, set it back to that. Every time you set it, you know, you're firing another workflow, and you can get these circular things going. So that just comes with experience. Try to limit your workflows. Try to have some big ones. You know, like rather than 5 individual workflows, try to get them to go in sequence. I've even done some things here with these workflows. Like I'll just show you this one here where I do something here and then I wait. You can go as little as 15 minutes later. For instance, I have one client where they get new leads come in. I then run a program here to figure out who should get that lead. They sell through 100 franchisees, and I actually Google geocode every franchisee to see who's closest. We don't care about states and counties. We want to know who's the closest. So I've got to measure the distance to every other franchise. And that can take that code a minute to run. So I have to, before I fire off an email to the franchisee to let them know who, that he got a new lead, I've got to make sure this code is done running and has successfully figured out who to get it. Otherwise, it sends out an email, but it doesn't know who yet. So, you know, there's some little timing issues. You might want to just make sure that the dust is settled before you go on to something. All right, let's go back to the meeting. I'll stop recording.